So let's start with a softball here, but this is one that I hear a lot from rec golfers. Lower lofted drivers go further.
Love that one. Yeah, that's kind of a common misconception. People come and see us all the time in the fitting environment that I play an 8-degree driver, I play a 9-degree driver, 9.5, and you hand them something that is a higher loft than they're typically accustomed to playing, and they look at you like, oh, I'm not playing this. Like, what are you doing? Do you even know who I am? And so, common misconception. A lower lofted driver does not necessarily go further. Will it give you faster ball speed? Sometimes. But when we start getting into what actually produces a longer drive, and that comes to finding that combination of carry with a landing angle that produces the maximum amount of roll possible. So if you get into a 9-degree lofted driver and you hit it, let's just say at 100 miles an hour, and you get to that 150 miles an hour of ball speed, but you're only hitting it 70 feet off the ground, 60 feet off the ground, and your landing angle is coming in at 28, 29, 30 degrees, what have you, depending upon the other angles you create, you're leaving so much yardage out on the table. And people will come in and say that, you know, I get most of my 260, 70-yard drive from roll that I get on the ground. And I always kind of combat that a little bit with, well, what we play out on the golf course is always a constant changing variable. What we land in is never the same.
Right.
So it could be firm one day, could go to a different golf course, and now you're landing into upslopes, and that 270-yard drive now turns into 210 because you hit it knuckle high with no spin, and you got nothing out of it once it hit the rough, once it hit, you know, pine straw, once it so on and so forth, whatever it is that we're landing in that's anything but firm, fast fairways. So finding the right lofted driver that gives you the correct launch, gives you enough spin, produces an apex height that still keeps us in that realm of a landing angle that gives us roll, you can sometimes get a 12-plus degree lofted driver that will outperform a 9-degree lofted driver with slower ball speed. So you might drop a couple miles an hour of ball speed, but because we've optimized launch, apex height, landing angle, and spin, you get further carry, better control, and more often than not, the average length drive is longer.
What about people that say, if I want to gain more distance, an easy way to do it is just to go with a longer driver shaft. Just increase the length. You know, we saw, Phil Mickelson did it with some success. I mean, he won a PGA championship, but
sure.
I mean, most golfers out there are not Phil Mickelson, but they do. I think some think it's like, oh, if I just go with a longer shaft, I'm just going to gain more speed, and that's going to gain distance in the long run.
Sure, and I mean, for some people that might be true. I mean, the majority of us, it's not, because now you start to bring in a couple of different variables. So the shaft is going to start reacting different because we are not only gaining static weight, we're also gaining swing weight, which is going to influence how that shaft is responding through the swing. Also, dispersion around the face at impact is going to go, for most people, going to go away a little bit. We're going to lose some consistency as far as finding the center of that club face. So now we gravitate further away from center. We start to lose ball speed. And then you also bring into that equation club face awareness. Are you going to be able to take that 47, 48-inch driver shaft and get that?
It's tough.
And get
Can
that club
confirm.
face back to square.
Yeah.
So even though you're generating potentially more club head speed, now you've actually lost ball speed because of the consistency in which you're finding the center of the face. And then you also lose control of the consistency in the club face, and now dispersion downrange goes up. So even though you're producing more club head speed, you may lose ball speed, and more often than not, you're going to increase the cone of dispersion as it goes downrange. Oh, and then that doesn't even start touching on the fact of what it does dynamically to your swing. So a lot, exactly. So we talked a little bit about the static weight and the swing weight going up with those longer shafts, but adding that longer golf club into play now starts to mess dynamically with how the body's moving through impact, and you get that longer golf shaft, and that swing gets longer, And now just the timing, the sequencing, the motion in which the body's actually moving throughout the swing all starts to change too. So now you're building that swing for that longer shaft around just compensation after compensation. But when you time it up, hey, maybe it's great.
Yeah.
Consistency-wise, I don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. The consistency, it's like for every one ball that you catch relatively clean, you're probably catching at least like the next 6, 7, 8 balls. I mean, I and you probably had a similar experience. It's so frustrating because you look at it and it feels like a sledgehammer for one.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't have ours built to spec because we were basically using standard heads. I mean, I wasn't removing weights out of mine to try and lighten it up and, you know, try and get swing weight closer to what I had been playing. But man, it feels like a sledgehammer. The one interesting thing that I will say, and I wonder if you notice this as well, but after I hit a whole bunch of like 48-inch driver like drives, I tried hitting my like gamer and it felt like a toothpick in my hands, but it actually was kind of cool because you feel like you're hitting, it's almost like a 7-iron.
Yeah, it feels like a pitching wedge.
And I was like bombing it for like the first 10 balls before I kind of started getting acclimated to the shorter length again. But for the like 10 balls, I was like, geez, this is amazing. Like, should I warm up with like a 48-inch driver just to got to gain a little bit of confidence on the range? It was weird. I don't know if you noticed the same thing.
And like you said with the swing, it felt like I had to be so much flatter. Like I'm not on top of the ball. I'm so far away from it that 3 inches really makes a difference. When you're going from
like
45 to 48, it's like, you know, I got a fishing rod in my hand.
Yeah.
That was
or a telephone pole.
Or a telephone. Yeah, more like a telephone pole, really, because of how heavy it was. But I'm wondering about what you would say to the two myths, or maybe they're not myths. One being the golf head doesn't matter, and the second being the shaft doesn't matter. So there's kind of two on each sides, two opposing arguments.
It depends on who you talk to. If you talk to a shaft manufacturer, it's all shaft. If you talk to a head manufacturer, it's all club head.
That's the problem.
So
we never get the real truth.
Exactly. So I would say that both are important. It depends on what you're trying to do as a player. So if you are trying to fine-tune, you've already found a club head that you love the look, sound, feel of, ball speed's good, and you're just trying to get a little bit more consistency out of it, much easier to make a shaft change and make a bend profile change, make a weight change, whatever the case may be. I mean, even tinker with length a little bit. If you are struggling out on the golf course with, like we touched on, not enough spin, too much spin, directional issues, finding the center of the club face, the head change is going to be the fastest and the easiest change to make in order to make some really big dynamic improvements. So if you are somebody that struggles consistently with a right miss, there's certain club heads out there that are going to promote more of a fade bias ball flight. So why would we try and get that club head to work with shaft? Same thing if you're somebody that consistently misses it to the left. There are certain club heads out there that have some bias towards the left side of the golf course for a right-handed player. We can sit there and grind on shaft for hours and not necessarily change the characteristics of what that head's designed to do. So the easiest dynamic change to make or static change to make is going to be switch the club head.